Greetings, my name is Clint Fleetwood, and this is my Godot tutorial on creating a 2D cutout animation inside of 3D space. So let me give you a little background why I'm doing this tutorial, or at least why this is a problem that I had discovered a solution to. I'm going to be working with a 2D artist on my next project. And we're going to be making a hex-based, tactical, turn-based strategy game that, it's going to be really, really important that my artist is able to do most of the artwork instead of me. Well, my 2D artist doesn't do any 3D, and I don't want to have to try to, make their art and turn it into 3D meshes and that sort of thing. But we want to use the 3D space because of the way we can use the camera, and the way the hex grid works. It worked really nice with that. And we can also have some 3D objects that will make it a really unique style, really nice look using 3D particle effects and that sort of thing. So we want to stick with the 3D, but we need the 2D animator to be able to do all of the artwork by himself. And so this is we determined that we were going to do like a cutout type system because with this, like, the little units can have a lot of different types of pieces that will be changed and interchangeable. So trying to make sprite sheets for all those would be a headache. And this way we could actually just use like a system to switch out the materials to make the unique units and that sort of thing. So this is the reason why we're wanting to use a 2D cutout type inside of the 3D space. Now, there's some problems that come along with that, and we're going to talk about some of those problems, and I'm going to show you the solutions that I came up with and what we did. So just let's go ahead and jump right in. As you can see right here on this, I had created a single little simple floor cube in Blender and put a texture on it. The only reason why I put a texture on it was just for a reference. You could have done this with I could have done this with a test cube or whatever, but this is the way I did it. So really simple scene, just a simple spatial with the floor, which is this mesh, lamp, camera, animation player, and some buttons to reset the camera. And this is the player sprite, as you can see right here. This is a cutout using the similar system as the 2D cutout system, except I use 3D sprites. And I was thinking that would work. I thought it would be really cool because it looks nice. As you can see, this is just a simple drawing. I didn't really do much to it at all. And then I created an animation, so it's kind of like a little idle animation. Again, this isn't any final result. It was just more of a test than anything. And so you see all these in this idle animation, they all move, and it looks good. And so when I go here and play it, it actually looks pretty good. It doesn't look too bad. But there's some problems with this specific system using it this way. And let me show you that. The first problem we come up with is if I can add a second one and move it over here closer to the camera and play it, you'll see let's pull it back this way. You can see that the character pieces start coming off of itself. As you can see, they're lined straight up and down here. This one they're not. And if I move it even more over, it'll get even more and more out of place. So this is because of the way the perspective camera works, and that these are 3D sprites, so they're all billboarding facing one direction, and since they're all billboarding, the way they rotate around and their offset positions and that sort of stuff doesn't stay the way you would expect it. So as we add another one, comes back here, put it right there. You can see this will be offset, and well, that one's good. Pull it back way over here. The shape gets even more cattywanka, and that's not a thing that you want to have to deal with. It's possible to use calculations with the camera to offset it and figure that out, but that seems like a really big pain. So as you can see, this using 3D just doesn't work as well as I'd hoped. And here's the more egregious issue, is that if I click the move camera, as you can see, since they're all billboarding, it all just kind of stacks and it doesn't even look like the object anymore. So that's something that we really, really don't want. I need a system where I can use 2D, where I can move the camera and it's the whole unit, it's facing the object while using the cutout animations. So I had to do away with that issue, that specific case, and I developed another one. I'm going ahead and show you this. This is actually using. This is actually pretty simple. Let me open this. What I did is I created a simple 2D sprite using the exact cutout animation system that's mentioned in the tutorials in the documents for Godot. So this is pretty much exactly that. As you can see, it's just another type of idle animation. Not very good, and this is all 2D. So there's no concern about it warping or changing or messing up or anything like that. It's just a simple 2D animation. And so we know this is going to work. We know this is always going to face the camera looking like this. Now what I did for that is I used the Viewport tutorial to make it where we can use a viewport. So I created a viewport right here. Actually, I created a quad first, but then under that quad I created a viewport, and the viewport I made the size. If things get kind of funky, this is where you start adjusting some stuff. So I made it basically the same ratio as this, and actually I used this size right here, 249, 312, and I created it 249, and I made it a little small for some reason, and for some reason these numbers don't exactly add up, but basically you get the point, is that it should be similar to whatever this control is. Someone may be able to tell me why specifically that it's not exactly that number, but basically what the viewport's doing here is it's grabbing that section, so it's going from 0 to 0 and then 240 on this sprite, and then it's going 300 down, and it's grabbing that, and that's what's inside this viewport now. So that's got the viewport, and that's all we did was just add this 2D sprite there. Alright, now this is where the technical part comes in, and this is in a tutorial elsewhere that I saw, but it's what we're going to use is the texture render target texture. Oh yeah, I forgot one thing. On the viewport, when you add a viewport, you must have the render target enabled. If you don't, it will not work. That's pivotal. You have to have that enabled, and so and then basically viewports everything that's 2D under it. So what this script does is it finds the player viewport and gets that texture. Okay, so that texture amounts to basically this 2D sprite right here. Okay, so it grabs that texture, and then what we do is create a new material, and then these materials set 3 different flags. It uses the alpha, which, as you can see right here, this is all alpha space, so it uses that. Then it makes it unshaded, which that's not required, but it's helpful when you're working things. And then it makes it double-sided. Now this double-sided one is really important when you use billboarding on quads. And I don't know if it's a bug or if it's a feature or if it's something I don't understand about 3D rendering, but whenever you billboard a quad, it seems to always flip it horizontally. And there's some ways you can fix that, and I don't know why it does that, but that's the case. So when it's flipped, if it's not double-sided, you won't see the back side because of the way normal mapping works. It actually wouldn't show through. It'd just be transparent, so it looks like it's messed up. This took me a long time to figure out, fixing this. But again, I don't know if it's a bug or if it's the way it's supposed to be. But whatever it is, you have to have the double-sided. And then finally, I added this on top. This one's not required, but it does help. And I can show you what it does when you don't do that later on. Anyway, so that's just simply creating a new fixed material. And then we set the material for this object right here, which is this quad. It's a type quad, as you can see. Set the material to this material that you just made. And then you set the texture, the diffuse texture of that material that's already there. Again, remember you have the override material set right here, and you get it right here. And so you set the texture of the fixed material, the diffuse on the fixed material, sorry, to the texture that you found right here. So what that does is it simply takes this this quad right here and makes its texture equal to what's inside this viewport. Alright, so and what that looks like when you play it, of course I don't have any characters right there now. I'm going to go ahead and link that in. So player 3D quad. As you can see, as you look right there, it doesn't look like anything. It just looks like a blank, unshaded quad. And actually, even if I could actually take this off, and you would see nothing. But when you play it, it does that. And like I said, it's flipped. You know, one of the cool things is if you move the camera, it stays in position really well. It you know, doesn't mismatch. Now that arm sticking out, that's just, you know, you can change that through positions. It's not that hard. If I add another one and another one, I can actually move them all over the place and they'll be absolutely fine. They look good, and you see that just they don't mess up in the way they look. They stay positioned well. It doesn't get anything funky. If you wanted to flip them to the other side, you could just do another animation that says flip or something like that. You know, face in another direction. So this looks pretty good, and this is actually really close to what I want. However, there's one small problem with this. If we look at the feet of this character right here, and I move the camera, watch what happens. The feet move pretty drastically from here to here. And it's even more pronounced when you're further away from the camera. And so you can see right here, for example, the feet are on the edge, and then as you're moving away, it comes all the way off the edge. The reason that's the case is because quads, when they're billboarded, you got to make sure that you got billboard Y on, and billboard and billboard Y on that. When the quads are billboarded, they're actually, like, it's always from the center, and so as you can see, as I move the camera here, it's looking at it from the center point. So if this was where the feet of the character was, the center is right here, and so that causes a little bit of problem. If the camera angle is always the same, you could really compensate for that without much issues. But if you're, for my case, where I wanted the character to be on a grid item, it makes it look like they came off the grid whenever you move the camera, and that's something that we really don't want. So this was pretty good. It was pretty close. So what I had to do was come up with one other option, and I used Blender for this. If you don't know much about Blender, I'm just going to go do something really quick. So here's Blender, and what I did is, instead of having a quad, I created a plane. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this new file. I did Shift A to create a new plane. Now I'm going to put it into edit mode, and I'm going to go to tab 1 and then 5, so I'm in this grid, and then I do RX90, and that rotates it on the x-axis 90 degrees. You want to do that in edit mode so the orientation of your object stays the same. If you do it in object mode, it'll change the orientation of the object, and it could cause problems when you export it. So as you can see right now, this one thing Blender does is it shows you the center point. Well, while I'm in edit mode, I could actually drag the whole mesh up like this right here, and now my center pivot point is right here at the very bottom. And what that does is, if I export this out, it would actually make the bottom stay right there, at the bottom right there, and that's good. But there's one small problem with that. When you export Blender, if you don't have it unwrapped, it doesn't know what to do with textures, and it's really simple to unwrap. You just go into edit mode, make sure the whole mesh is selected, and you press U. And for this quad like this, or for this plane, it's real simple. That's all you've got to do. And so it's unwrapped. If it's not unwrapped, you'll never see the texture. And I don't know if there's a way to do it in Godot. I haven't found a way. Maybe the 3.0 there will be, or maybe I'm just missing something. But in Blender, it's real simple. You just do that, and you do File, Export, and then make sure you're using the better Kaleido. And I just used the defaults, and then I exported it to what I wanted to do. And so when I was done with that, this is what it looks like. right here. It's a plane. It looks pretty much the same as this. It doesn't really, you can't really tell the difference, except for that says quad, and then this says plane, which is a mesh instance. And the viewport and the viewport and the sprite are exactly the same. I may have changed the numbers just a little bit here because the shape is a little different. But as you can see, if you look right here, you see that this pivot point is in the dead center of this mesh. Which is a quad. Right here, the pivot point's right there at the very bottom. And so it's billboarding and billboarding Y and then the mesh. And then other than that, you use the exact same script. You just override, set the material override, and grab the texture from the viewport. And we can add those in by linking them like this. See, again, it looks the same. And if I push play, you can see it's basically the same. But if you notice the feet, it does move slightly, but not nearly as much. The feet are basically where the feet were before. Instead of it moving to the center point, because that's the pivot point that it looks like, it's much more closely. And for my case, it stays in the grid. And if I add multiples of these and just move them all around, they stay looking pretty good. So that's basically my solution I came up with. To make it where I can actually do 2D cutout animation in a 3D space. There's one small caveat to this, is that right now these are set on top in this script right here, and normally that may not be a problem, but let's say you have a particle effect that you want to surround it. Well, this will stay on top of those particle effects unless you set the particle effects on top, and that means everything has to be set on top, which could cause problems, potentially. But without it being on top, you can see right here, when it goes to a certain angle, it cuts into the character based on where the floor is. And I don't know if that is a rendering bug or if that's a lack of understanding on my part. So what I had to do was set them on top so it stays on top of that. There's some things you can do to work around to get that fixed, but that's what I have done for now. So if you like this tutorial, go ahead and subscribe. I'll be making more tutorials as we go. If you have comments or questions on how I did this or how I arrived at these conclusions, I would love to chat with you about it. You can leave a comment on the video. Also, one thing I wanted to mention, I have a game that I'm going to be putting on Steam Greenlight very, very, very soon. Actually, it'll be Tuesday, September the 6th. So if you want to help me get one of my first games greenlit, I would greatly appreciate it. And I'll leave a link to that in the video comment section. All right, well, thank you again, and I hope to hear from you soon, and maybe hopefully I'll have another tutorial up in a week or so.